And we will move on to item A6. Dr. Davila Hagigat, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Tonight, we are pleased to share a number of celebrations, and we
class stories about Phoenix and their lives during 2020 to 2025. We also had a few community events with business people and others that came to Phoenix Center for the Arts Festival in December. So we had some community-based stories as well. So just one more thing about the process. These fourth graders came in a stage series of about 5 field trips where there might be 3 schools at a time coming into this very room. And I commissioned 4 artists, Taisha, Darren Armijo Wardle, Lucretia Torva, and Anel Areola. Each of these artists had a role in one of the murals. And so what we did is we would greet the students as a big group. Then they would separate out into their classes with the stories that they had created as a class prior to the field trip. And each artist went one-on-one with the classes and helped them create their own painting. At the end of that field trip, each class had a chance to take their painting with them on the bus back to their school. So it was a wonderful way to incorporate history, Phoenix history, Arizona history, as well as their own personal experiences and art, showing that art and history and math and all of these other disciplines, it can be very interdisciplinary and very fun. So with that, I invite artist Taisha Harrison to come up, and we have a reveal as a result. Now, Taisha took these stories to heart, as well as we took photos of every single class small painting that got sent back, and she incorporated these elements, and she's going to tell you about that before we do the big reveal.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. Hi. I am super excited. Thank you so much, Carol, for bringing me on as a 17 muralist for Phoenix Fabulous Experience. I had an amazing time with the kiddos. Like, that is my passion. So everything that Carol had stated, we did tons of storytelling. One of the things, key points that I wanted to do was to incorporate their voice into the paintings. So you'll see those key symbols in there. And I'm an abstract artist. I'm not a realism artist. There's all type of art. And so with Carol being so welcoming and the vibrancy and the color, I was so excited. I was like, yes, Carol, I love working with kids, and I get to, be myself, my true authentic self, which is what I expressed to the students when I was working with them on the 4 or 5 field trips that they did when they were coming here. But there were multiple things that I incorporated. I also incorporated my colleagues' paintings into, so you'll see different symbols from their paintings that they did with the kiddos. And then I also incorporate just a different, I guess, not facts, but the different elements along the way from 2020 to 2025. And so I'm super excited to reveal. And yeah, thank you so much.
Big moment. A big moment.
Thank you. So as you can see, there are many elements, and I'm actually going to stand over here. So on this side is COVID in 2020, so the pandemic. So it emphasized everything from COVID when our students were having to do distant learning. You have 6 feet. If you really look at it, it's very, very detailed with all these different symbols. And I like to be a little extra, as you can tell, in color. So it has a dual purpose. We're going to flip it on the opposite side. Now this side is the great growth. I have the symbols or the logos that I've given to the NFL. So we have ball yes, the toilet paper and the paper towels. We have, as I mentioned earlier, economic growth, and then the tech hub, and the list goes on. I try to fit everything in it. And then also my 1-year-old niece handprint. And that's, to me, it was very special because our youth is our leaders. And so I wanted to also incorporate that. So thank you so much.
And the name of this that goes along with the time period. This is called Phoenix 2020 to 2025 : the Great Pivot. So thank you for presenting, Taisha, and thank you for having us be a part of the district's academic program as well as the display. Thank you.
What a great honor for us to be able to experience this as part of the celebration, and to know that although all of those artists that contributed to this piece are not here, we know that they are as part of our painting. Yes.
Can we
We're
join
gonna
the
take,
picture?
yeah, let's have you come down, and then we'll take a picture. And what an honor to see all the murals. And we continue to be a place where they will be displayed. And so that just brings so many things to life and so many things to be grateful for. Thank you again. Bye. And now I'd like to introduce Mr. Lodato, principal at Emerson School, and he will share with us about our Autism Awareness Day. Mr. Lodato.
It's not. How's that? Then better? All right. Good evening to all of you, and also to you, Superintendent Hagigat, and to members of our community. I just was invited here this evening to share with all of you about the event that we had on April the 26th. And I believe we also have an opportunity to share, if you didn't get a chance to see it, the Fox 10 news story that was done in our school. But in celebration of Autism Awareness Month during the entire month of April, our school did a series of things because at Emerson, we house 6 classrooms of students with autism. Presently, it's 55 students. In the fall, we'll add a 7th classroom of all kindergarten students. So we'll be at around 67 students total, which is a pretty sizable. Right now, our enrollment's just over 300. So 311 right now. We'll be in the 320s by fall. And so to have 67 students in our autism program is pretty significant. And that's also significant to us because it's a chance for us to have a lot more opportunities for students to be included as much as possible in the gen ed setting. And it's also a great opportunity for our students in gen ed to learn a lot about what these differences mean. What does it mean to have autism? What is autism? And anyway, throughout the month, we did a variety of different activities. The students got to name the what was previously called the sensory room, and it was a sensory stimulus room and sensory reducing rooms, and those were very cumbersome and not fun at all. So we put it to the students and let them come up with some names. They voted and they landed on the crave cave, for when you're craving that opportunity to reduce some stimulus and pound on some rubber mats, or roll or swing. And we also, the other one they named was the Zen zone. They like that alliteration, and that was a room that's quite the opposite. It's very nice and low lighting. There are bubbles and cool lights. There are these sensory compression devices that you can crawl into this human-sized canoe and it hugs you back. It's a lot of really cool stuff in there. So our students participated in a walk that day. All students across the school participated from pre-K all the way through 8th. They walked a circuit that was just probably about a half mile in and out all around the campus. And along the way, some of their stops were to visit these rooms they never had seen before. So they had a chance to visit the Crave Cave and the Zen Zone and find out what is this thing, and also learn, hey, this is open to you also in the gen ed setting. Now we need to figure out how to make sure that it's accessible to you, but just to introduce them to that was really important. As a part of the celebration, Courtesy Chevrolet and Rappy Law Group both were contributors to that event. As a community school, the partnerships in our community are really important to us. So Courtesy Chevrolet offered to help, and they said, what can we do? And we said, well, you can see in the photograph at the top left, we said, we're really trying to improve communication. And we think something that would be meaningful to us would be to have these augmented communication devices. So they're like the ones you would see on an iPad. They're just stagnant, except that they're mobile, so we can put them around the campus. They have sign language, they have visual symbols for the most common types of things you might want to say on the playground, like chase me, or tag, you're it, or even things like that hurt, or I'm hurt, or I'm sad. So our next steps are to teach our students how to better use these to integrate communication, both with neurotypical and autistic students, but also for autistic students to have those easily accessible in all parts of campus where they might need them most. And anyway, knowing that that's what we wanted, they said, listen, we want to help you out. How much will it cost to cover them? I told them the amount, and they said, we'd like to do the whole thing. So they paid for all 8 of those communication devices. and Rafi Law Group also said, we'd like to help out too. What can we do? They made it a donation to ensure that there were snacks and food. And the teachers then said, well, let's make sure there's a meaningful part of that experience. So they chose snacks and food that give you sensory feedback. So whether it was crackers and things that were crunchy, that some students with sensory different sensations actually have an aversion to those kinds of things, whereas others crave those kinds of things. So it really brought awareness, a new awareness to all kids about just the senses they have every day and don't necessarily think about. They also did some gummy things, and I think someone even discovered some pop rocks. So lots of sensations to explore as a part of the walk. And then everyone convened as they completed their walk. You can see in the bottom right here, every class had a puzzle piece that was representative of their homeroom. The students in the autism classroom painted those during their art time. The students in the homerooms then all signed their name with a Sharpie. So they're all represented there. And then as they showed up little by little, they placed the pieces together to demonstrate that from many pieces, we are just one community. They laid those out. And then you can see in the center picture, we had a ribbon cutting as a way to officially open those rooms to everyone, but also to say thanks to our governing board, to our district officials who made that investment and that contribution partly through decision-making of Alicia Zelvis, our Director of Exceptional Student Services, who said we need to invest in this program. And all of this was a nice reflection of community, contributions from all, both monetarily and otherwise. There were volunteers there that day from the community, and also from in-house, from district representation and our governing board. So it was a lot of fun for us, and it was only the start of the day. We came back and continued to celebrate our community and health and wellness that evening by hosting a Y Wellness event that was as we see it anyway, it's part of a healthy community is being engaged with our community, but also having things that are helping our kids look at the prospects for growing into the healthcare profession. So maybe on a different day, I can share more about that with you, but also a great success. And on that evening event, we had partners from ASU, U of A, NAU, GCU, Bioscience High School was there. We were able to, with U of A Health Solutions, did a total of 25 adult preventive health screenings. Just over 100 kids attended. And it's something that now that we've done each of these things once, we see a path forward for making these annual events. So we're really excited to invite you to what will either be the fall or spring or maybe both. If you have any questions, I would love to answer them.
Thank you.
All right.
I have one quick question. Could you repeat the part about the puzzle pieces that everybody contributed to? It was touching.
Yeah, so there were 16 homerooms that we have in both gen ed and autism classrooms. Each class had a puzzle piece that was cut out. One of the teachers in the autism classroom, she put her husband to work and he volunteered to help. He said, I've got the tools to do it. So he cut those out for us. The kids then in the autism classrooms painted them during one of their art classes. And then everybody had a chance to sign their names to it. So you'll see all students and teachers reflected in the signatures that are on there. And our theme for that was many pieces, one community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we do have a video that we want to share to close this celebration. And it's cued and
the best. Fox 10 at 4.
Raising autism awareness, the creative way one local elementary school is helping students with autism engage and communicate with peers. A Phoenix Elementary School is coming together to celebrate National Autism Awareness Month.
According to the CDC, about 1 in 36 children are on the autism spectrum. It's very, very common. Fox 10's Lindsay Regis joins us now live at Emerson Elementary to explain why this school is raising awareness.
Hey guys, 55 students at Emerson are on the autism spectrum, which is about 25% of the student population, which is why the principal says it's so important to raise awareness on campus. Many pieces, one community. That's how Emerson Elementary is recognizing students on the autism spectrum.
For them to be understood and to understand others is really important for our kids to just see each other as kids and recognize that they have more in common than they do apart.
During National Autism Awareness Month, each classroom laid down a puzzle piece to represent the complexity of the autism spectrum.
Emerson has been so supportive of the autistic community and giving me the opportunity of going above and beyond what IAs are typically No, expected to do.
An instructional aide and current and former students on the autism spectrum were in attendance.
To my understanding, it's sort of both a neurological and developmental disorder. However, it's also identified by some people as less of that and more of a personality type.
They are appreciative of Emerson Elementary's efforts, including an autism walk and communication display.
It will tell the world a little bit more about autism and the kids that are experiencing it.
These students had support from the community, including Courtesy Chevrolet, who donated new augmented communication devices.
These signs are for the autistic students that have a hard time communicating. So it has pictures, numbers, a little bit of sign language. So it makes it easier for the students to communicate to the teacher what they're needing, what they're feeling.
It all ended with a ribbon cutting above a complete puzzle. Yeah, this is the first year Emerson has put this on, and the principal says he's hoping to make it an annual event. Reporting live, Lindsay Regas, Fox 10 News.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lodato. That was just amazing. And I continue to have a huge smile every time I see or experience this type of event, because it really speaks to how united we are and how we respect every student. Thank you for
Thank you
that.
so much. Thank you.
We have yet another celebration, and I'd like to invite Principal Sells to come forward, and she will share with us about the tree planting. Come on up.
Good evening, governing board members and Dr. Hagigat. On Arbor Day, APS and Trees Matters organization partnered with Bethune, and we planted a total of 34 trees. So we had 25 out on the playground to go around the border of our playground to add shade and beautification for our students. And then in the courtyard, we planted 9 trees. We had K-8 all classes, including our ESS students represented that day. They all named their trees. So they are now in the process of putting up plaques where they have named their trees and who planted them. The students were really, really involved and excited. We also had News Channel 3, I believe, and Fox 10 come to do some interviews with some of our students. And Dr. Hagigat, and I believe some of our governing board members. So we really had a great time. All the kids were involved. It was bigger than I thought. I never thought it would be that big, but everybody really joined in. The forestry department from APS was there to make sure that we planted things appropriately. And then also our plant services, our maintenance, Miguel and his team, they were really awesome coming out to help dig holes on the inside of the school and make sure that irrigation was ready to go so our trees don't die. So we are very, very excited about that. The kids are loving that. And they also are very cautious now at the playground. They're like, oh, we have to be careful of our baby trees. They're growing. So everybody is really taking an effort to make sure that our trees stay and do what they need to do in terms of keeping our school beautiful and giving us some shade during the summer.
Thank you. That was much appreciated. And some students said that we were going to have mature trees in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. It was just the pride that we got to see there was amazing from everyone, adults and kids alike. Kenilworth School had an exciting event as well and donation to the school. And tonight we have Mr. Petangelli. I did see you. He will share some of the information about this musical donation. Welcome.
All right, I brought a friend with me. So good evening, governing board members, Dr. Hagigat, cabinet members. This is Laura Meter. She is a teacher in the instrumental music program at both Dunbar School and Kenilworth. We get the privilege of sharing her. And this program, this donation, all of it came as a result of her effort to bring music back to Kenilworth. We talked about the great pivot over here. Kenilworth School has this amazing auditorium. If you haven't seen it, please come. And it was not amazing during the pandemic years. And we want to make sure we bring that back to the community to open up this amazing hall for student entertainment. And this opportunity, Laura was one of the first to bring back the live music in this auditorium setting with her guitar program. The first year that we've had the program at the school, the next event in the auditorium was this wonderful surprise that we had. And I'll let Laura talk about that a little bit.
Thank you for having me speak. So we were contacted by an organization out of Colorado called Candid that helps supports music in schools. And I worked with one of their project managers there to for a donation for Kenilworth. It was about $2,500. They let me pick the supplies and of course the guitars, because we are working on building a guitar inventory to be able to provide take-home instruments for all of the students. So they gave us about 15 guitars and some guitar strings, but that was not all. They brought in a live band, Tyler Childers and the Food Stamps, to not only play live music for the students, engage in a Q&A session, and also formally present the instruments. So that was it. It was pretty cool. And the students, of course, had a blast.
Thank you. And we do have a video as well of this event.
Performance and a few gifts from a band this morning.
Fox 10's Danielle Miller tells us how they're trying to keep the music alive in schools. The band The Food Stamps is playing tonight to a sold-out crowd here in Phoenix. But today, before that show, some very lucky students got a private concert and some guitars to keep. The students here at Kenilworth Elementary starting their day on a different note. All of that thanks to the food stamp.
It's real see kids respond to some of them, and I've heard this style of music before.
And if the students like the music, they can learn to play it on these 15 brand new guitars. They were donated by the band and the nonprofit Candid, which helps keep music in schools.
It's pretty critical for these kids to have a creative outlet. I think that we've all seen rising mental health challenges since the pandemic, and having these kids have a way to learn and be creative and express themselves is vitally important.
Music's important. So, if you're having a bad day, something that can kind of reach those negative days into something positive. It gives you something positive to focus on.
This is the first year for the guitar program at the school.
Now that I'm in guitar, I really feel connected with the instrument. I feel more happier too.
7th grader Anaya Ruby also happy she can now take the guitar home occasionally to practice.
I'm so happy for that because at home, I'm really just, by myself sitting at home, just on my phone, really nothing to do. So being able to practice on the guitar and do something instead of just being stuck on the phone forever, it's nice.
The organization has donated nearly 3,000 instruments so far. Danielle Miller, Fox 10 News.
Again, Laura Meter, thank you, Laura, for your help in bringing that back to the school. Is there any questions I can try to answer? Or I might have to call Laura, she left me.
No question, just a lot of excitement. Thank you. And finally, I'd like to share an exciting project our office managers and clerical staff have been working on. This year, we prioritized customer care with our office staff and provided training to all office managers, assistant managers, and district office administrative assistants throughout the year. As part of the training, this group developed the customer care standards for our district that are currently being projected on our screen. And we were able to really build the consistency that we need so that we care for our families, our staff, and one another in a way that is high quality. I'm incredibly proud of the work our clerical team has accomplished, and I am pleased to share Phoenix #1's customer care promise and standards. The standards will be displayed in all schools, district offices, classroom, and even on our school buses. Customer care will continue to be a priority district-wide. We look forward to introducing these standards to the entire Phoenix #1 family and ensuring that our staff models these expectations in their daily interactions with students, family, and guests. It's very important for us that everyone is treated appropriately and that we show that level of respect that everybody deserves. Those are all of our awards, recognitions, and announcements. Thank you.
I was just Googling Bethune's tree planting. I thought we might see that news coverage, so I'll definitely check that out and see some of our students. That was my favorite thing about Bethune's tree planting ceremony. I hadn't been to an event like that that had kids there before, so I'm excited to see that. With that, we'll move on to our next item, which will be our public hearing. Item B1. As part of the annual budget revision requirement, we will move to this item, a public hearing as required by the Arizona Department of Education. Final budget revisions for the fiscal year 2023 are to be disclosed to the public and adopted by local governing boards no later than May 15th. This revision represents budget information from PESD number 1 to close out the fiscal year. At this public meeting on May 9th, we now welcome any comments about this recommendation for the May budget revision. Do we have any public comments to share at the hearing this evening? All right. Hearing none, we will resume our meeting with a roll call vote to adopt. Let's see, sorry, to vote on our budget revision adoption. Do we have a motion to adopt our budget revision?
Reggie Carrillo, I motion to adopt.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Alicia Vinkel, second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
I thought this was just a public hearing and no action was required.
We have it as both tonight, as a action and informational. And so because our deadline is May 15th, we would need to take action as part of our budget revision.
Okay, so then are we going to get a presentation?
We can certainly do that before the vote takes place.
Awesome.
Yes, ma'am. Governing Board President, Governing Board Superintendent, and the community. I am pleased to provide a brief presentation about our final budget revision process and review some highlights and updates to close out the fiscal year. Next slide. Fantastic. So districts are required to submit a final budget revisions to ADE annually by May 15th and upload it to the state by the 18th. And that needs to be approved by the governing
Moby Max donated $3,795 for a site license at Emerson School. And Phoenix One Foundation donated $8,000 to be used for district's greater need. And last but not least, we have Courtesy Chevrolet that donated, as you saw earlier in our presentation, augmented communication boards to Emerson at a value of $4,000. Please, let's give our partners a round of applause for their generosity. I also want to extend our gratitude to Dr. Allen, who assisted our business and finance department for the last 6 months. This was Dr. Allen's last day, and we're incredibly grateful for his support. And last but not least, I want to say thank you to ESPA, our Education Support Professional Association, for meeting with administration during Meet and Confer. Although we haven't gone through this process before with ESPA in the past, we have had regular meetings with the association, but we want to thank ESPA leadership for having the opportunity to meet and confer with us and be part of this collaborative process. Those are all of the superintendent reports today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, we can move on to item D1. Do we have any board members' reports to share?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo some of our celebrations on Arbor Day, just being able to be present and see the tree planting. It was really great to see how engaged actually the middle schoolers were. I was very surprised to see them. It was probably because it was early, so their brains just weren't functioning what they were actually out there working on. But it was really great to see them enthusiastic about participating and taking ownership of their school and having pride in investing in the school. So thank you to all our partners, APS, Trees Matters, and our district office. And then I'm interested to go back and visit Clarista. Is that Clariston? is the one I want to go visit. And then last Friday we had the opportunity to attend the Breakfast of Champions for Aguilar Leadership Institute. So that was really nice just to honor some of our state representatives that represent part of our district. And then lastly, just close with, again, just the appreciation to all our staff that take care of our students and just everybody that gives their 100% effort in showing up every day. So thank you.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Thank you for being here. I just kind of want to piggyback on what board member Jessica Bueno mentioned about, we're so thankful for all the celebrations that we have had in the last few weeks. It's amazing. The mural of all the pictures is absolutely stunning. I want to go check it out, like every little spot that's in there because it's so detailed. But to piggyback on Aguilar Leadership, we did have the Breakfast of Champions, like Jessica mentioned, and we did acknowledged a lot of the alumni that goes through that Aguilar Leadership Institute through their high school, getting to college and what they're doing after the fact. But more importantly, we were able to bring Tomas Valles to Garfield Elementary School to speak to the 2 8th grade classes at Garfield. And he is one of the original runners for McFarland USA movie. If you have not seen it, as I haven't seen it, but after being there the whole day on Friday, I'm like, we have to see this movie. It just sounds so interesting. And I've yet to see it, but I'm going to see it. But he was speaking to the kids about leadership, about having a dream, following your dream, not allowing, anyone to tell you no. And most importantly, it was really interesting because there was a little situation that happened. I don't know if President Trujillo remembers, but there's a little girl that he was asking questions. And there was an 8th grader and she spoke, but she didn't speak loud enough. And then when he said the answer, she said, oh, I said that. And he said, that's exactly right. You have a voice. Don't let anyone else speak it for you. Don't let anybody else take your answer. You have to speak for yourself and, be loud and be heard. And he talked about his struggles going through, the people that helped him. And, it doesn't matter what struggles you're going through high school. You can get to college. You can have an education. You can have a career. So The kids at the end of his speaking event came up, some of them came up to us and shook our hands, and it was really awesome to see eighth graders, come up and wow, it's so good to hear you. It's so good to be here. And they shook all of our hands. I mean, not just Tomas Valles' hand, but Rosemary Ibarra, who is there from Aguila. And then she spoke to them about what it takes to get onto this leadership program, what they can do for them, how much they can help, and how it becomes a total family. It's not just a program that they're there to help you for 4 years, but she's really there. And I've seen it personally to help them for life. And so, of course, Garfield is taking the initiative to reach out to them and getting connected. And that's what we want to do and bring to the rest of the schools for the district. So I was really happy and excited to be part of that. Thank you.
I was able to attend a few of these exciting events in the last couple of weeks. The breakfast, the autism acceptance walk was incredible. I got to join my son on the walk and see both of the sensory rooms, and then join the health fair later in the day. And I was really excited by how many of our students and families got to engage in that. We also, Emerson had their production of Disney Kids Aladdin musical, and they produced it at Emerson, and also were able to go to Gamage and perform on stage one song. What meant the most to me about that event, though, was seeing our community show up for our kids. And I will tell you that 13 neighbors that I know personally walked down to Emerson and sat in that cafeteria to watch these 3rd through 5th graders perform. And that, I think it just is incredible to see our community wrap their arms around our kids. And then just a couple upcoming state and national events that I wanted to mention are Arizona state budgets. It was not approved today, right? Okay. No, there was, okay. As of right now, it is not set to roll back or cap the ESA vouchers, and that is not good for public education. So if you are watching in the community, please email your governor, your Senate, and House leadership and let them know how important that is for our public school funding. And then also this week, I did want to mention that our federal COVID-19 public health emergency ends this week. And I just want to acknowledge this milestone. As through the pandemic, we were able to support and care for students in ways that were not previously possible, including virtual learning, mobile meals, enhanced cleaning, reducing our testing, social emotional support, etc. I want to thank our leadership, past and present, for their focus on our community's health and safety. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. For me, I have 3 that I want to talk about. Just a big thank you to Principal Sells and the entire Bethune school community and the students there. It's important to just acknowledge the situation we're in with our dealing with environmental inequities in the school sites that we serve and in the communities that we serve. So there, for me as an educator and wanting to impact beyond the 4 walls of my classroom, I was always looking for resources for my community, right? And whatever issues and inequities they're dealing with in community. And so just reiterating that thank you and gratitude to our site leadership for being open to these resources and making connections and being connected to other, like in this case, nonprofits, institutions serving our community is a huge thank you, because there are many ways to impact our students' lives, and for educating them in the classroom is one thing, and taking them outside of that classroom or another planned education activity, this time focused around trees and tree canopy coverage. works to improve their student outcomes, just as our goals dictate, but also works to improve their quality of life overall. And 5, 10, 15, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. So that's it, 20 years. And then I'm a fan of cactus, so that's about 75 years. So it's a little more back. So again, thank you for that. Thank you for everyone who worked to make that day possible. Our maintenance crew, everyone who had a hand in that. And then thank you to our board, the colleagues who made it out, who are supporting behind the scenes and just attending that and getting to know our students more. Switching gears here, thank you to, I just was present at a budget update. So I want to thank you, Dr. Heigat and the team for just setting those up. The budget has been a black box for me and as much a lot of people, right? And it's meant to be that way. It's designed to be that way. And so thank you for putting these planned meetings so that we as a board, for me specifically, since I know I'm attending them, I don't know if anyone else is going, but if you do want to learn more, if you're not already engaged in the meeting process, I would say set up a meeting and attend those. Mr. Manley just makes the whole process, what's happening, very clear. Especially for someone like me who has, again, not had that understanding, has not had that education, but I'm on a journey to get that education to update us. We definitely brought you in at a time when for that purpose to just clear or to calm stormy waters here. And so thank you for really stepping up and fulfilling that purpose. And I know you have a long way to go, but thank you again. Much appreciation for you for joining our team. And we appreciate it so much because we've already had a huge impact on balancing our budget and making sure that us as elected officials are doing what's necessary so our students, we can get our students where we want to get them. And then my last thank you to my board colleagues and to the district for their token of congratulations. This was last board meeting to my marriage to my husband. They gifted me an aloe vera plant. And so any cactus plants are the way to my heart. So thank you. And it being from your own garden makes it that much more special. So thank you everyone for just remembering that and providing that healing plant to us. That's all.
Thank you. That was all of your guys's of course difficult to follow, but I'm really appreciative that we have a board meeting during our staff appreciation week. It's been an absolute privilege to get to know our staff members over the last 4 to 5 years. They welcomed the board, supported our learning on the journey that we're all on together. So thank you for choosing Phoenix Elementary. We appreciate you, we value you, and we're excited to see where this journey goes. I also got to visit Bethune for Arbor Day and getting to watch that student impact that those kids have on their school, their campus. They'll be driving by probably when they get older, looking at their trees, telling the stories of the funny names I got to hear that they were naming the trees. It was great. So it was an honor to be there. Happy Arbor Day to everyone. And we're hopefully going to get more trees out to as many campuses as possible. After that, later that week, I was able to attend the Aguila Youth Leadership Breakfast that Vice President Bueno and Board Member De La Rosa mentioned. That was in support of honoring local leaders who, the few I know, also happen to have served on school boards. So among their other public servant roles, it was an honor to see Christian Solorio, Cesar Aguilar, and Flavio Bravo recognized for their dedication to students and their community. As Board Member De La Rosa mentioned, we did get to visit Garfield, which is close to my heart. I did attend there as a wee one. And along with the guest speaker and Mrs. Hernandez, it was great to hear her share that her mom was a proud Lowell Tiger. So she's excited to work with Phoenix Elementary now, knowing that our community really does have a need for high school readiness and secondary education resources. She welcomed the students that we had there to come be a part of that. And she would take care of their service fees, and they were excited. There was a handful that came up to definitely inquire about who to talk to because they were looking forward to joining. Let's see. So thank you to, of course, Dr. Davila Hagigat, Dr. Alshire, Principal Bernal, and Master Teacher Ruben Rodriguez, along with Board Member De La Rosa for bringing the opportunity, for organizing with us to make sure that happened when the opportunity presented itself. So happy Staff Appreciation Week. Thanks, guys. And with that, we'll move on to our community communications. This is a time for public comment. Members of the board may not discuss items that are not specifically on the agenda. Do we have any electronic comments today?
We do.
Okay. Just want to triple check. We don't have any in-person comments today?
Not that I'm aware of.
I did not receive any.
All right. We will probably not need to, but they are allocated 3 minutes. So floor is yours, Mrs. Valencia. Thank you.
We received an electronic comment by Ms. Rebecca Law that says the following. Hello, my name is Rebecca Law. I have been an employee with Phoenix Elementary for 2 years now, and I wish that I was staying longer. Unfortunately, this is not shaping up how I hoped. When I applied for the math interventionist position, I was excited. Math, small groups, using data to guide my student to success and making connections with students of all ages and skill levels. I've told my story many times about how I was subbing for more than half of my first school year. And then when I decided to become the 6th through 8th grade math teacher for Dunbar, and we all know how that story goes. Since being at Hurd, I was so happy to be back doing with my math intervention, even though there was still some subbing sprinkled in. But now as the year wraps up, all I'm doing is iReady computer time. I encourage this district, this board to reflect on what they want from a math interventionist, as it seems no one had a clear idea of what the expectations were, why the position existed, or even the importance of such a position. Do you just want an extra body for facilitating iReady, or to be able to cover for absent coworkers? If so, highly qualified mathematics teachers such as myself should go elsewhere so that they can successfully utilize their knowledge. I would love to hear from my friends next year that math intervention is thriving, that the work PECTA did at the meeting and confer has boosted morale so much that the teachers don't feel the need to call out due to mental distress, and interventionists don't need to sub. I want to feel regret that I left and not feel relief I anticipated feeling on May 26th. Thank you for listening, and thank you to whomever read my comment for being my voice. Best wishes and warmest regards, Rebecca Loud.
All right. Thank you very much, Mrs. Valencia. With that, we will move on to item F1. Do we have any recommendations regarding our consent agenda this evening?
Yes, it is recommended that we approve the consent agenda as stated here in our agenda.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to approve our consent agenda as presented?
Jessica Bueno, so moved.
Reggie Carrillo, a second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, may we please have a roll call vote to adopt our consent agenda as presented, please?
Yes, roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno,
Aye.
Mr. Regional Carrillo,
Aye.
Ms. Erica De La Rosa,
Aye.
Dr. Alicia Vink,
Aye.
and Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Aye.
Thank you.
With that, our motion does pass, and we will move on to item G1. We will move into executive session. The governing board may choose to move into an executive session for discussion or consultation for legal advice with the district's attorney regarding any item on the agenda. No decisions will be made during executive session. We will be discussing consideration of salaries. We don't anticipate being in there longer than an hour, so for those that'll be waiting, thank you. And for anybody else that'll be leaving, thank you for being with us. Are we adjourning to executive session? Perfect. So do we have a motion to adjourn to executive session, team?
Reggie, could I have a motion to adjourn to executive session?
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Jessica Bueno, second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. Our motion passes and we will adjourn to executive session at 6:18 PM. 3, and we will resume to regular session. And our first item would be item
President
H.
Trujillo,
Yes.
I'm sorry, point of clarification, we do need a motion to resume to regular session.
Ooh,
Thank you.
my apologies.
Jessica Bueno, so moved.
Roger Carrillo, a second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, may we please have a roll call vote to resume to regular session this evening?
Roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno,
Aye.
Mr. Reginald Carrillo,
Aye.
Ms. Erica de la Rosa,
Aye.
Dr. Alicia Vink,
Aye.
and Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Aye.
Thank you.
With that, we will move on to item H1 and listen in for our receive and discuss reading data update on draft board goal for grade 3 literacy.
It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Gonzalez so that she gets an opportunity to share with us about our governing board draft goal number 1, early literacy.
Yay.
Good evening, Madam President, board members, Superintendent Hagigat, and members of the audience, viewing and in person. Tonight, we're going to talk about our early literacy draft goal that the board is proposing and to help you see progress that we are working toward to make our goals. In particular, we're going to look at our thinking about this as a goal where we have our inputs that include teacher training and support, a scientific-based reading curriculum, and interventions for our students, so that at the output, we're looking at highly trained teachers, clearly measurable growth goals, and tiered supports for all learners, so that we hit that outcome of increased literacy for K-3, increased confidence in being able to access curriculum beyond 3rd grade, and decreased off-task behaviors, because we know the critical importance of being able to read fluently by 3rd grade. I'm excited to have 2 members of our team come and present this evening. We have Dr. Lloyd and Ms. Caitlin Fagan, who is our reading assessment coordinator, and they're going to talk about how these outputs are being implemented. Or how those inputs are being implemented to create these outputs and to share some of the data with you. So at this time, I'd like to invite them to the podium to present.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. Can you hear me? Short. Okay. Thank you, President Trujillo, members of the board, Dr. Hagigat, cabinet, and our community and families. Like Dr. Gonzalez said, my name is Caitlin Fagan. I'm the reading assessment support specialist in the district. I work really closely with Dr. Lloyd and Ms. Nikolic and with the CNI team. So I currently oversee our universal literacy screener. And with that, there's progress monitoring and supporting our K-3 reading within tier 1 and intervention, which is tier 2 and 3. I also support our school sites with the move on with reading requirements. So the first one is output number 1, which is highly trained teachers that Dr. Gonzalez had mentioned. So we have a few things in place right now to support our teachers with that. So the first one is letters, which is a big undertaking. It stands for Language Essentials for Teachers of Reading and Spelling. We're currently training 138 teachers, reading interventionists, ESS staff, and administrators. In letters, we are in year 1. It is a 2-year program. Letters is also the approved training for both the dyslexia training designee as well as the K-5 literacy endorsement that is going to be required for all in-service educators by 2028. So we're getting a jump start on that. The second point on this slide is the dyslexia training designee at each site. That is also a requirement by ADE. So each site has identified at least one DTD, as we call it. That person is a staff member that supports and trains teachers on best literacy practices and interventions for all students. It also supports, they also train and support teachers on students who are displaying common reading behaviors that are associated with dyslexia. The next point on this slide is the core phonics science of reading training for all administrators, sorry. Our administrators participated in a 95% group. That is the company that we work really closely with on core phonics and intervention training that is aligned with the science of reading. They did this back in August and November. So they had a half-day training in August, a half-day training in November. The purpose of this training was to share with the administrators the look fors in the classroom. What should instruction look like? What should supports look like? And how they can best support the teachers at their sites in both tier 1 and then tier 2 and 3 interventions. We also had 95% group consultants come to each school site at least twice a year to follow up and to support teachers and interventionists. Last point is the West Ed training for staff at Edison for their English learner strategies. This is to support the staff in creating scaffolding during instruction based on their students' English proficiency levels, which will allow them to access text in the class. So it's directly related to, reading support. And that would be K-8, but obviously we're driving for K-3 right now. So our next output, number 2, is the measurable growth goals. So we use a variety of different measures to identify growth. The first one is the iReady diagnostic and benchmark data, which is our standards-based measure. It explains to us how well students are accessing grade level content and standards. AIMSweb Plus is what measures our reading foundational skills and determines risk level. It's what we use to report to the state for move on when reading. And that's the data we'll be looking at tonight is the AIMSweb Plus. The last one is progress monitoring. So the measures of oral reading fluency that's used in class, that's used to really help drive instruction. Obviously, we use all of this data together to help drive instruction and identify skills that we can support students with, but we'll really be talking closely about the second bullet, the AIMSweb Plus data tonight. Output number 3 has got kind of small font. So this is our tiered support. So tier 1 is what is given to all students. So this is directly aligned to our MTSS processes that Dr. Ailshire, I know, has worked really hard in getting out to all schools. Students are identified as benchmark, approaching, or at risk after our fall AIMSweb Plus screener, which is done August, September. Generally, we try to do it after the 10-day count, so mid to late August. And then after we've identified where they're at, they get support based on that. So I'm going to try and as quickly go through all of the different tiers and all of the supports. So at the bottom is tier 1. Like I said, this is what all students have access to. This is our best first instruction that I know Dr. Gonzalez talks about a lot. So we have Benchmark Advance, which is our core reading program, our board approved core reading program, and it's also ADE approved for Move On When Reading. This past year, we supplemented that with a 95% group core phonics. So that is a direct, systematic, and explicit phonics program to really boost up the foundational skills, which is what we are assessing in AIMSweb Plus. The next one is the letters training. The third one down, I'm sorry, is letters training. So this supports teachers in tier 1 instruction. It talks about best first instruction. It also talks about scaffolding and supporting students within your classroom as well. So being that we have 138 current teachers, staff members participating, we're really trying to support that tier 1 and have the strongest first instruction possible. The next one is progress monitoring and benchmarks, or universal screeners. So again, AIMSweb Plus, every student is benchmarked fall, winter, spring. That's the universal screening. And then from there, we progress monitor at least once a month. I'll get more into that as we go up in the tiers. Fifth one is the MOWR, or Move On When Reading parent letter number 1. That goes out to all families, K-3 in the district. It just notifies them of the legislation and notifies them of supports that are available at their school and within our district. That goes out in August. And I'll get into the MOWR letter number 2 as we go up in tiers as well. And finally is the dyslexia training designee. that I mentioned in that previous slide. That is at least one staff member at each site that's there to support teachers. So tier 2 is for students that are showing moderate or high risk based on our universal screener, AIMSweb Plus. So these students receive that tier 1, everything that's listed in there, and then they may receive what I think my microphone, no, okay. So the first one is Walk to Read, which is, it is an intervention model. So students are grouped after they're giving the assessment, which is the second bullet down, the PSI and PASI intervention screeners. So PSI is phonics screener for intervention. PASI, PASI is phonological awareness screener for intervention. Students are assessed on these measures, and then they are put into small groups. Walk to Read at schools typically will use any staff available. So that way we can have as many students in an intervention as possible. And it's not just on the classroom teacher. It is a school-wide tier 2 intervention model. Following that, for tier 2, we do have reading interventionists. Every school has a K3 reading interventionist. Some schools do have additional reading interventionists to support our upper grades. They are generally responsible for making sure that the tier 2 intervention, so the Walk to Read model, is happening, supporting it, making sure assessments are occurring. MOER parent letter number 2 is generally shared at conferences with families. It's for the students who are identified as moderate or high risk on the AIMSweb Plus universal screener. We also identify for families the domains that the students are struggling in. So that might be phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, reading comprehension, or vocabulary. In identifying that for our families, we also share with them strategies that they can do at home to directly support those domains that they are identified as struggling with. And we use both AIMSweb Plus and iReady data for that. And that does go home in both English and Spanish for our families, as well as the strategies. The last tier 2 support would be small group instruction. This could take the form of that Walk to Read model. It could also take the form of occurring in the classroom with the classroom teacher, possibly an IA, push-in services by EL, ESS, or a reading interventionist. So that is generally tier 2, our moderate to high risk students. When we get into tier 3, those are our neediest students, the ones who are showing that they are struggling the most. So typically those students will receive tier 1 in their classroom, tier 2 in that Walk to Read model, and then tier 3 is this additional support for them. So first bullet would be our MOER Summer School. That is an invitation only program for our K3 students. We identify those who are struggling the most. We invite them to participate. It is the whole month of June, Monday through Friday. And this year we have some really exciting afternoon activities for them. In the past, it has only been morning academics. So we are actively trying to get students to attend. We keep it to a 15-to-1 ratio. So that way it can be really targeted for those kids and smaller groups. The next one is the K3 reading interventionist. I put this tier 3 because they specifically only support K3 students in reading. They will generally have about a group of 5 to 7 kids at every grade level that they will support at an additional time of day. So it may be pushing in during tier 1. It may be pulling them out at a separate time to work with them in a really small group and give them some extra instructional time with an expert on reading. We also have our EL interventionists that can support K3 students in obviously the language acquisition, as well as their English reading, writing, and speaking foundational skills. We also have resource and ESS teachers that can provide the targeted support for students who have reading goals in their individualized education plans. They are also able to use the materials that we use in tier 2 and tier 3 that are typically saved for the reading interventionist. Those are the 95% group materials, but they are available to our ESS teachers. So that way we're using them throughout all of the different supports. And then again, we have the more frequent progress monitoring. So those who are struggling the most, We will kind of spot check. We'll do a 1-minute assessment with them, see where they're going, see if they're showing any growth. So those are our outputs, and I'm now going to turn it over to Dr. Lloyd to talk to you about the data.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Fagan. I think she should stay up here, right? Just go ahead and finish the rest of the slides. President Trujillo, members of the board, Dr. Gonzalez, Dr. Hagigat, and cabinet and other members, grateful to be here with you again. It's exciting to be here with an update on our literacy. I will start off, Caitlin or Ms. Fagan, sorry, I don't. Yeah. Explain that 3 times a year we give a screening to students to see how they're doing with their reading and to make sure they're making adequate progress. And so we're sharing part of our spring data. I say part because we're in the final week of administering the assessment. So we have about 80% of our assessment, and you'll notice everywhere that we're showing spring data, I try and put in parentheses the numbers so you can kind of see, okay, this is how many, and the number on the left, like for the spring here that you're looking at, that 1724 is the number of students, for example, who have been tested, and the total that we have right now is 2,157. So it's about 80% at this point in time that we'll be able to present to you today.
Why did we bring it to us before it was complete? Just any rhyme or reason? Sorry.
We brought this based on an understanding that we needed to present this data to you as you were looking at the goals. And it was just something we wanted to give you data to prepare you.
Okay, sorry. It's a large enough sample. I just was like, did I miss something? Do we absolutely need
And
this?
to be frank, the testing was expected to be finished a little bit earlier, but there's some people that just didn't quite get to it yet.
Hey, it's rough in there. Okay.
So yeah, we will provide an update. The window closes this week, so we'll be able to provide, and we should, in our fall benchmark, we tested around 98% of our students. So I imagine we'll have around that percent tested by the end of this week and be able to share an update. And today, as Ms. Fagan was saying, we're looking at risk level. So we're looking at, that's an indicator that tells us whether students are on grade level with their reading skills specifically compared to peers nationally. And so that's what we're looking at. And we'll start just by orienting you really quickly to this first slide. We're looking at the percent of students at the different risk levels. This we're looking at for all of our K-3 students that we have in the district who are tested. And you see the green is for those who tested at benchmark. Sorry, I should have brought some water. And are showing that they have grade level skills that they need. And then yellow are the students who are approaching, showing they have those, and then red are students who are at risk and not quite there yet with their reading skills, and who we need to provide that targeted support and additional interventions that Ms. Fagan spoke to previously. So we'll start out with some celebrations. Almost 1 out of 5 of our students who were at risk in the fall, thank you, were able to move a risk level. So you could see obviously our red has shrunk quite a bit, right? And they've moved into that approaching or the benchmark level. And so that's a celebration. We almost doubled the percent of students that we have at benchmark, going from 20% to 38%. And another thing, I know you can't quite tell from looking at this, but in looking at the movement, almost half of our students who were in the approaching in the fall are now in our benchmark category. So those are some of our celebrations. Obviously, we still have some growth opportunities, right? So we have half of our students who are still in that at-risk category, and also 2/3 of our students who in the fall were categorized at risk are still at risk. So that's something that we know we have to be able to help students in all categories at all levels of reading to be able to grow and improve. So that's an area that we will focus on. This second slide is now looking at a comparison of fall to spring, but we're looking now by grade level. Again, I'd ask you to pay special attention to the numbers right below the grade level, because that's showing how many we have tested. Some grades had tested more than others, as you can see there by the numbers tested on the left hand out of the total number of students that we have on the right. And again, let's look at some of our celebrations. So we have one of the celebrations, we have positive trend in all grade levels. We reduced our percent of students who tested at risk, and we increased the percent of students who were at benchmark. And you see that the green getting bigger, right? And the red shrinking for every grade level. And that's what we'd want to see. And you can obviously see there's one kind of outlier in this group, right? The kindergarten students who we were able to have a lot of those students move into a higher level of reading and show that they have the skills that they need for the kindergarten grade. And so that is awesome. It's and just to contextualize it a little bit, that's what you would expect more, because when they come in kindergarten, they're just at the very foundation, right? It's the very first skills that they're learning. So they don't really have gaps yet. And so we get to work with all of them, and a lot of them are able to move. And then as they go into upper grades, it does in some cases become more challenging if they have skills that they're still missing.
If I may point something out, if you look at our grade 2 and grade 3 students, those are students who in kindergarten and first grade missed foundational understanding of reading because they were out with the pandemic. Those were the years that we were shut down or working virtually. And so those students have a lot of foundations that we're missing. So the growth that we're showing is important, but it also reminds us that we've got to continue to find ways to support those students as they progress through the grade levels.
I also just want to jump in really quick, because that kindergarten number is everything. I'm so excited about that, because if we're looking at our growth trends, that will put our first graders in an incredible position. And I'm just so proud of everything that we have done. So excited about this number. So congrats to everybody.
And that is one of the reasons I wanted Ms. Fagan to help present, because she's the impetus behind bringing the scientific reading programs and all the support.
Behind. You have stacked the deck for our kids.
She has,
Congratulations.
yes.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. That was actually one of my growth opportunities. So thank you for sharing that. And that's very true. We spent a good amount of time today, Ms. Fagan and I, and talking about the importance of really being able to bring some of the programs and the focus to our kindergarten to have them have the foundational skills, because that's where it has to start if we don't want to have missing skills and challenges later on. This next section, so we have 3 slides. We've broken up now to show the breakdown by school, and how we've organized it, or how I organized it, was looking at the schools who have based on enrollment size in K3. So these 3 schools that you see here were 3 of our largest schools in terms of K3 enrollment. And so they're together, so you can see schools of similar size together. I do want to just say one of the important things as we look at data is that obviously schools can be very different, even if they're the same size. The demographics, the staff, the programs, there are a lot of differences. So it's important to not necessarily judge all schools based on how others are doing. And especially in this case, where some of our schools don't have the same number of students tested. So I just want to share that before we look at specific schools. And as we go through these, I'm going to focus on the same celebrations and growth opportunities in all three of the slides. So some of our celebrations that you're going to see are at all of our schools. Again, we did have positive movement where we have an increase in the students who moved into benchmark level and a decrease in the students at risk. We also have some exceptional movement where you'll see schools who reduced, students at risk by 15% or more, and also schools who increased the percent of students at benchmark by 20% or more, and or doubling their percent at benchmark. So for example, you can see Kenilworth, who reduced their students at risk by over 15%, Garfield by 20%, right? So those are our big celebrations. And then you see, I don't think on this slide, I'll go to another slide where you can see some of our other schools, how again, they were able to reduce, like Edison, by 15%, 15% at Capital, and schools like Shaw, who were able to improve by 20%. Capital improved by almost 20% and doubled their percent at benchmark. Edison doubled their percent at benchmark. Bethune doubled their percent at benchmark. And the last group here, we have Dunbar. Dunbar did an exceptional job here. You can see at moving students to benchmark and reducing both, and also reducing the percent of students at risk. Lowell as well tripled the percent of students that they had at benchmark and reduced almost by 20% their percent at risk. You see again a 17% reduction at Emerson and at risk. Yeah, so a lot of our schools, Magnet had the reduction as well as Whittier, and Whittier also more than doubled their percent at benchmark. So those are some of our celebrations, our growth opportunities. If you could draw a line going back through these at 50%, right? You see that we have a lot of schools that do not yet have more than 50% of their students at benchmark, right? Here on this slide, there are none. Here on this slide, we have just Shaw. And here on this slide, we have Dunbar and Magnet. All right, so we know we still have room for growth there and trying to ensure that we get all of our students K3 to benchmark. And the last slide that I have, it does have a couple errors on it. I noticed when I was preparing today. So right here where it says white, non-Hispanic, the percent there should actually be 71%. And then the multiracial should actually be 64% here. So we'll get you an update on that for that.
Sorry,
so
what was the second one? 71 and what was the other?
So this one is 71% for the white non-Hispanic students. So 71% were at benchmark. And for our multiracial students, we have 64% at benchmark. Yeah. Apologies for there's been continued numbers changing as I've pulled new data. So here, just to orient you to this slide, this is showing our early literacy, but now we're just looking at third grade because that's the draft goal, right? It's just based on third grade. And we want to look at it, based on categories and groups to give you a better idea of some areas where we obviously, again, we have to celebrate as well as grow. So there's 4 groups that had at least a third, which is right around what the goal is of our students at benchmark. So that was our Black student population, multiracial. I know it doesn't show what it is, and the white, and our students who are participating in the ALPS or gifted program. And then you can see we have several groups or categories of students who are far below that goal, right? Our students who participate in Indian Ed or or receive English language services, exceptional student services, and also our homeless population are all below a 30% threshold, and some much further below that. So those are some of our growth opportunities there. So just pause, see if you have any questions about the data slides before I turn it back over to Dr. Gonzalez for the wrap up. You're welcome.
No questions, just comments. It's beautiful to see the growth at our schools, especially and correct me if I'm wrong, the highest growth being showed at Dunbar. And then, so that's beautiful news to hear because we know that they've been through a lot, and it's, I know their learning has been impacted. However, it's nice to see that hasn't been impacted negatively, that they are growing, and that what they've gone through this year has not impacted them as negatively as I would have thought. So it's wonderful to see that the opposite's occurring, and I appreciate everything that's happening, especially at this school site where we know they've gone through a lot. Thank you.
And I would just like to also point out the reason we're able to pull so much of this data before everyone is completed is because of the systems that Dr. Lloyd has created, and being able to constantly be analyzing our data and getting this. If you'll remember a couple years, when I first came here, Dr. Lloyd presented a schedule to reduce the amount of times that we were testing students in the school year so that we're not testing as frequently, but that when we do test, it's really meaningful data that's helping us determine what the needs are for the students. And I think this is a beautiful example of the work Dr. Lloyd has done to pull this together and to create these systems that allow us to pull data on a real quick basis that we can then turn around and use with our principals.
I'm not surprised. Dr. Lloyd has been an advocate and passionate leader for our students, and I can't even, I'm never moved. I'm a really either hypersensitive or I don't feel anything, but just listening to this, I'm not surprised. You always do wonderful work, your team, but I'm beside myself.
So I'll come up and share. There's still more to come. So we've recognized that there are still areas of growth. And so some of the things that we're going to be instituting next year we believe are going to help continue to show that growth that we've put in place already. Part of that is making sure that every school is having a protected 90-minute block of reading. And that's really important because when students get that uninterrupted time, particularly when we look at what's happening for tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, we need to have time to really make sure that it's focused time that's really supporting them. And it's not a rush job without them being able to attain what the teachers are presenting to them and having time to practice it. We also, Ms. Fagan has not only brought letters to the district for that 138 teachers, she's also now creating a cadre of teachers who are going to be trainers for the letters program. So that means that even after this 2 years is up with this particular set, we will have 4 trainers or 5 with you. Four trainers. We're hoping to get some more, but right now we have 4 people who are being trained to become trainers. So they will be able to continue to provide the level of training that our teachers need to meet the requirements of the state legislation, but also because we know that the scientific approach to reading is really making a difference for our learners. The West Ed pilot that we have done at Edison with Mr. Fuentes and his teachers that have been taking this on to work on strategies for English learner, they have had such tremendous success with this and are so excited about this. We are moving to incorporate that next year. All of our EL interventionists will go through the training along with any other teachers working with our ELs across the district. So that's going to be another level of training and support to make sure that we understand best practices to implement in the classrooms for those tier 2 and tier 3 interventions. We've also committed to district-wide collaboration time where teachers will be able to come together in grade level groups supported by administrators and specialists who are going to help them analyze their data and understand which practices are getting the greatest benefit. We also are going to have more common formative assessments at each grade level. Again, having that data that we can look at on an ongoing basis. And again, Dr. Lloyd has put together a really thoughtful schedule working with our testing coordinators at each site to understand what's the best way to gather data and use that data to impact our instruction with our students. And then Ms. Fagan talked about those K-3 reading teachers who are going to help provide that really intensive level of support. And so that's another thing that will be coming in 23-24. So that concludes our presentation. Thank you very much for your attention and your support.
Yay. Thank you so much for the presentation. I just wanted to recognize Ms. Fagan. I had the opportunity to see her in action at the Family Engagement Task Force, and just the resources and activities that you were able to provide that night. I saw a lot of light bulbs go on with our parents, and so I just saw your work in action, and I just wanted to recognize your impact. Thank you.
I don't want to move on from this one. Oh, let's see. With that, we will move on to item H2, our receive and discuss regarding our 2023-2024 master salary schedule.
Thank you, President Trujillo, members of the board, cabinet, and our community that's watching in person and online. Today, we have the opportunity to share with you more details regarding our compensation study and mastery salary schedule. So we will have the presentation uploaded. And as we do with other presentations, we have the draft superintendent guardrail number 3. It'll be the presentation on the master salary schedule. And when you take a look at our inputs, outputs, and outcomes, you will see that I'll take you straight to our outcomes. We want to make sure that we continue to increase our academic achievement by providing quality, highly qualified, and effective staff. We got to see a little bit of that in our previous presentation. And we're also interested in making sure that Phoenix #1 will become the destination district for our professionals. You will get an opportunity to see where we've been. And this journey began, next slide. This journey began in 2017, 2018. There was a curriculum audit that was able to see the organizational structure and quantifiable relationships between the jobs and the needed improvement. And then we had the strategic plan that set the goal of we will hire, retain, and develop highly motivated and effective staff. In 18-19, there's a partnered with Battle for Kids for McKeesa, and that was again another attempt for us to bring this type of study to our district, but that was again delayed. And then in 2019-20, we had different areas there where the part where I'd like to highlight is that there was yet another delay because we were dealing with prioritizing with a worldwide pandemic where this was something that we were not able as a district to continue those efforts. You'll see also that there was some organizational changes, which again delayed more of that work. Then we have 2021, where we had through our meet and confer, PECTA proposed a new salary structure for certified staff. It is very important here that we highlight the efforts of our employees to make sure that we bring forward something that continues to value what we have here as our staff continues to grow with us. And so you will notice that we were able to, PECTA administration agreed, meet and confer to complete a full compensation study. And I do want to take a moment here to highlight that collaborative effort and our ability to make sure that we work with our employees, especially with our PECTA certified group, to bring this to fruition. You look at 21, 22, and that's where you see a lot of the movement take place, where we have our RFP and we're able to, in November of 2021, there were only one submitted response, so that was not selected. And on 22, 23, we were able to close that RFP, select a vendor, and this was done by committee. We had the different organizations support that effort. We want to highlight that our input of our employees is valued at every step of our process, and this is no exception. So in October of 2022, we began our relationship with JB Reward Systems, and we've engaged in this compensation study. And so that's a little bit of where we've been. Mr. Manley will share more about where we are. And for our audience that's watching, these are some of the slides that were captured from previous interactions at previous meetings. So Mr. Manley, I'll turn it over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So where we are, first of all, and the public that's present, Miranda Martin, thank you. Our Director of Child Nutrition, wanted to point out that she's here at 8:25. It's awesome. So where we are currently, so the findings and recommendations from this comprehensive JB Reward System study, the findings found that there were no patterns of inequity based on race or gender. The hierarchy is mostly in good shape with some realignment needed with some positions. The compensation was being driven by position title and not necessarily position content. There was no mechanism for advancing within the current salary schedule. And that brings up the quote, stuck at the minimum. We all kind of have talked around that, what that means. And then there was little coherence between salary schedules. And I know that we currently have about 11 salary schedules in the district. The recommendations based on those findings were that we create a master salary grid that aligns with all positions with job content and responsibilities, creates a system for advancement that focuses over the range of time. Specifically, if you look at the years 3 through 8, that's when we have folks that are trained up that tend to leave the district. So this equitable plan would mitigate that issue, adopt salary increases that address those who have not advanced in the salary schedules over time to mitigate that stuck at the bottom piece, and then prioritize funding to address internal issues before and across the board increase. So that's the equity piece that we've been talking through. You go to the next slide. Some of the further findings that we've discussed, if you look at the supervisory administrative management, so the goal for this is to get our district in the 60th percent of the market. Currently, the ranges for that group is in the 37th percent, which represents about 63% of the surrounding districts paying more than we pay, which makes it hard to recruit and retain teachers and administrators. The same thing with professionals. They are at the 50%. That professional group is folks like our OT, PT, and speech folks. The teachers, the starting teacher salary, our current district is at 37%. We have a number of stipends, which puts us in the 50 percentile. And then the singularity, we are heavy with stipends. That puts our district at the 85th percentile. Support and hourly staff, they're in the 45th percentile of the market. And again, with the salaries being around the 37th percentile, again, representing that the majority of folks around our district pay more than we do. The recommendations for this would be to adopt a salary range for all positions where the midpoint of the salary range is at 60% of the market. Again, so we can recruit and retain high quality professionals. and to adopt salary increases that advance all staff with an extra boost of compensation for those that have spent so much time at the bottom of the salary schedule. And then by addressing those internal inequities, the entire group would become more externally competitive than we are now. And that leads us to where we're going on the master's schedule. And back to you, Dr. Hagigat.
Thank you, Mr. Manley. And so knowing that our interest has been to have that internal alignment and equity and external competitive, engaging in this study has provided those two outcomes. At the 425-23 governing board meeting, the ranges were shared with the min, mid, and max. And tonight, we have the master salary schedule with job classifications where every job in the district has been rigorously evaluated, scored in 5 different measures in order to align job grades. And this is going to be considered for action on the May 22nd, 2023 governing board meeting. It's important that we provide the needed time and space for our governing board members to review the study in its entirety and provide that feedback. And so as you look at where we're going for our next slide, we are looking at if the recommendation of the compensation study is adopted by our Phoenix #1 governing board, then we see that every employee would have a 2.6 base increase. If below, new minimum will increase further into the range, and equity adjustments to advance experienced staff closer to that midpoint. It's key to share here also that as part of this compensation study, it's been a recommendation of reducing those inequities. That's been a very important goal for our organization. And then we have all staff will receive again at least 2.6 base increase. You look at, we have support staff at 7.7, teachers 8.1, and educator professionals 4.7. If we can go to that next slide, thank you. And so we are looking at, in order for us to reduce inequities, that we will have a differentiated range there. And we want to make sure percentage, and we want to make sure that that is highlighted as we communicate with our staff. If again, this is approved at our next board meeting. So we look at beginning teacher pay that will rise to $50,535 with stipends. We're looking at about $56,000. It's important for us to highlight this because this is one of the areas that has been key for us to be able to recruit new staff. And then we're looking at the projected cost for support staff is $900,000 out of M&O, administrative and management. We have $300,000, and teachers $1.5 million. We have out of classroom site fund with educational professionals at $250,000. This is financially sound, what we're sharing with you, and that's key for us to continue to maintain that approach. Next slide, please. So for our next steps on May 22nd, as I shared, we will be able to present this recommendation to you, our governing board, to approve the master salary schedule with the job grades. Also, we will present the salary placements and increase as recommended by JB reward system. We will have, upon governing board approval, we will start to communicate these outcomes to our staff, and we will also work through making sure that we begin to recruit teachers according to that new master salary schedule. It's also important for us to point out that we want to make sure that our board members have the opportunity to ask questions based on the information that it's being received, and for your administration to share those responses as well. So that is our presentation for today, and I hope you appreciate our people as much as I do up there for discussion. Thank you.
Yes, I just wanted to thank everybody that was involved in making this happen. As you can see, this conversation has been going on since 2017. And I just can't stress enough, if it wasn't for our teacher union that was very much holding the line on this whole process. And just, I want to make sure that they are acknowledged and appreciated because they've got us this far. And to my colleagues, I just want to also thank you for not continuingly to kick the can down the road, but instead we actually picked it up and are going to do something with it. And so I'm just really proud of us for not settling on industry standards, but pushing JB reward system to really come up with a more equitable compensation study. So kudos all around, and I'm just really excited to really help our staff. Thank you.
Agreed. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to our next item. Item I1, our approval of the fiscal year 2022 single audit review.
We are inviting Mr. Manley and
Hello,
team
hello.
to share with us our audit.
Am I good now? No, I'm good. All right. Whoa. All right. Fair enough. Thank you, Governing Board President, Governing Board Superintendent, and community members, including our Director of Child Nutrition, Brandon Martin. I'd like to, first of all, I'm extremely pleased that I can present this single audit presentation tonight. We got it done on time, and not only did we get it done on time, but the results really blew my expectations a little bit out of the water, kind of where we're at. I would like to introduce Dennis Matchkey. He's our lead from CWDL. I will share that our friends from CWDL have already been at our district this week because we were already into the FY23 audit, and we've already pulled hundreds of documents, and he was in the office next to mine today, and we were able to share some time together to make sure that we're on the right process to get this done as we move forward. If you go to the next slide. I tell you what, we're just going to go ahead and say that this presentation goes on guardrail number, or draft guard superintendent guardrail number 4 for the budget, to make sure that we have the inputs, the audit, the output is the audit results, and the final outcomes are a compliant budget process aligned with the state and federal public school finance requirements. With that, I wanted to go over the agenda for this meeting. Really quickly, we're going to go over the timeline. I provided digital copies of all the final documents, and I also had some printed copies that came with it as well. You guys got a document governance communication, which went over some of the highlights with you. The single audit report that will go into some detail. The USFR, Uniform System of Financial Records questionnaire that went out. And some of the areas to improve from the USFR, and finally the ACFR, or the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report highlights. If we look at the timeline, I've kind of beat this to death a little bit, talking about how we were able to get a number of extensions. Typically, the fact that CWDL has been here this week shows that a typical audit year, we start this process now. We have time to pull documents in a meaningful way. During the school year, we have the summer to review what those look like. And then we have October, November to finalize these things, and then December finish up. So my goal for this next timeline is to get this done before right at the end of the winter break, so that we're all on the right time frame. But I wanted to thank Dennis and his team for really putting in an amazing effort. I know our final extended time was March 31st, and we were on the phone until about 8 p.m. on March 31st, and we got this done, and it was done with fidelity. So with that, I will pass the microphone over to Dennis Matchkey, our lead from CWDL.
All right, good evening, Madam President, governing board members, cabinet. So I want to talk about the four individual letters or things that came in the packet today. The first was called the governance communication. This is the shortest letter that you would have gotten, 3-4 pages long. Really what it is a letter from the audit firm to the governing board saying what happened during the audit. It explains that we didn't have any material corrected audit adjustments. It explains that there was one new accounting standard change as it relates to leases. And then that we didn't have any disagreements with management and that we're independent. A lot of boilerplate language, but it's just a letter if there were any discrepancies to communicate with the board. The second document we have is called what's called the single audit report. And that's where we analyze and test your federal expenditures, so your federal grants. Obviously, with the significant ESSER funding, that's one of the programs that we have to test, as well as there's a rotation of programs. Every 3 years, any program over $750,000 of expenditures needs to be tested. So we have that rotation as well. And for the current year, for the fiscal year 22 audit, we did not have any federal compliance findings or internal control findings related to federal compliance. As that's consistent with the prior year as well. So we're seeing really good results and really good controls in those areas. Because of the significant ESSER spending, we tested quite a substantial percentage of your total federal projects, and we'll probably see that continue into the future because of the spending in subsequent years to fiscal year 23. The third document we have is we call it the ACFR. It just stands for the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. And that's anywhere between a 70 to 100-page document. Made of 3 sections. One's the introductory section. That's where I would focus your time if you kind of want to do a quick glimpse of it. That's what's going to go through changes from the past year to the current year, as well as a letter from management to constituents of what's going on during the year, as well as our audit opinion. And we gave a clean audit opinion. That's the highest level you can get. That just means that we didn't have any material audit adjustments or material weaknesses that we found during our audit procedures. Then you have the financial statement section, which goes through all your financial balance sheet, income statement like schedules, as well as footnotes. And then lastly, we have what's called the statistical section, is about the back 20 pages. And that shows a 10-year trend in your activity, as well as some activity related to property taxes, buildings, equipment, that type of thing. And then the fourth document we have is what's called the Uniform System of Financial Records Compliance Questionnaire. And that's about 167 question document that we have to go through of yeses and nos. And as we go through that, we found about a 92 to 94% confidence rating. So how we calculated that is we looked at every single question. We looked at those questions that we had to identify as no being a negative response or something just wasn't done correctly. And we're coming up with a 92 to 94% average confidence rating. So that's really good. If you go to the next slide, we'll kind of go through just some of the key areas of improvement. So the first one, it says governing board and management. It's nothing against you, but we just have to have different things approved. So fundraisers should be officially approved either at the board meetings or approve a designee to approve those events. A student activities treasurer should be approved on an annual basis for the student funds. And then the last thing is conflict of interests. Those conflict of interest forms should be filed and processed for each governing board member and key members of management on an annual basis. And all employees should understand and be trained on the conflict of interest policies. And if they do have a conflict, those should be maintained and memorialized in a folder. We had journal entries. We had a few journal entries that weren't signed as approved by someone other than the preparer. That was identified as a significant deficiency in internal control as well. Sounds worse than it is. It's really just a matter of making sure someone's reviewing journal entries that are changing records in the accounting system. And we're reviewing that this week and noticing that that is being done. So that's being corrected. Cash and revenues, we just had a few. We sample, some of them aren't deposited timely being 7 days. Pretty routine finding because sometimes it's hard to get the monies from the group to the bank statement. So that's a pretty routine finding that we see. We tested 15 employees. One we didn't see a fingerprint clearance card for. There's a report out there called the Arizona Auditor General Spending Report that just needs to be posted on the district's website. A couple attendance things, which are pretty routine for partial day absences and total numbers not agreeing to the yearly reports. Again, 169 sounds like a large, but that equates to about one student. So when you have over 4,000, maybe, you know, an error of one student really isn't that bad with the amount of times you need to reconcile that. And lastly is IT. Password policies should be documented and addressed, as well as disaster recovery and contingency plan. And that should be tested on an annual basis. So it's not just making sure your systems are backed up onto another server, but really what are the procedures and who's going to do what step, and outlining that and making sure that that's tested on an annual basis. So every player in that knows what they need to do in case of an emergency. And those are, you know, the 4 documents that we have. There's a lot of information there. I want to thank Mike and his team. They did a great job getting us that information. I know there's been a lot of changes in the finance team over the past year. So our plan is to we're out here this week and we're going to have everything wrapped up, hopefully by the end of December this year, and a little bit more timely feedback. Thank you.
We're happy to answer any questions, and you might notice that there was a conflict of interest form that was being signed tonight. So this audit is already bearing fruit.
Thank you very much. I do feel very prepared for this presentation, the communication that went into this. So I do appreciate all of the work you walked into, and that we are in a clear, organized space to move forward. So thank you and your teams for everything put into this. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure working with this group, and we look forward to this upcoming single audit. Thank you so much.
Motion, we approve fiscal year 2022 single audit review.
Alicia Vink, I'll second that.
Any discussion? Hearing none, may we please have a roll call vote to approve this item?
Roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno,
Aye.
Mr. Reginald Carrillo,
Aye.
Ms. Erica de la Rosa,
Aye.
Dr. Alicia Vink,
Aye.
and Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Aye.
Thank you.
With that, our motion passes and we will move on to item I2. We are being requested to approve the 2023-2024 Phoenix Elementary Education Support Professionals Association Meet and Confer recommendations. Do we have a motion to approve this item?
Reggie Carrillo, a motion to approve action item I3. Sorry,
I2.
I2.
Alicia Vink, I second it.
Thank you. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, may we please have a roll call vote to approve item I2?
Roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno,
Aye.
Mr. Reginald Carrillo,
Aye.
Ms. Erica de la Rosa,
Aye.
Dr. Alicia Vink,
Aye.
and Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Aye.
Thank you.
With that, our motion passes. Yay, ESPA meet and confer process. And we will move item I3, the approval of our ESSER 3 retention bonus.
Reggie Carrillo, now I motion to approve action item I3.
Thank you.
Alicia Vink, I second it.
Thank you again. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, may we please have a roll call vote to approve item I3?
Yes. Roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno,
Aye.
Mr. Reginald Carrillo,
Aye.
Ms. Erica de la Rosa,
Aye.
Dr. Alicia Vink,
Aye.
and Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Aye. Yay. Bonuses are always appreciated. Next, yes. Thank you. With that, we move on to item I4, requesting approval of our student outcomes, focused governance goals and guardrails.
Reggie Carrillo, a motion to approve action item I4.
I second.
Any discussion?
again, I just want to say a huge thank you to our president, vice president, and every other board member, my colleagues here who are present during the meetings. It was a very daunting task to, and I wasn't even planning them right, but to show up and present. So a huge thank you to the planning team behind that put everything together, the presentation, all that. We forged ahead and we got through that phase of this process and communicated to our community, did our due diligence, and then huge thank you to the team for gathering this feedback and sending it back to us so we know where our community stands in terms of our guardrails. That as they see tonight will continue to guide everything that we talk about. So with that said, I'm done.
Thank you, Mr. Carrillo. You touched on everything important to me as well. Vice President Bueno really knocked us out a really solid timeline to get these executed. So thank you so much for handling that. And our data presenters, without you, we would have been out in left field somewhere. So it was a great experience to have those discussions because we got to learn together as we went through the process. I wanted to say something else about this, but I'm really excited to get this approval going and move on to the next steps of our student outcomes, focused governance, timeline, execution. These items will all be published on our website, among other things like mentioned in our previous report that we've got to get published on there, but I'm excited about that part too. So if there's any, that just will be a point of, I guess, access to the information to see what we're doing, where our monitoring is. So any other discussion on this item before we vote? No changes, no updates. Okay, I feel really strong about it too. This process is not pointed at anyone else but the whole group of our students. That's the outcomes solely just of the students that we want to see. This isn't, pointed at any separate school. This is literally kind of what Mr. Lodato said earlier. Together, we are a whole community. So this is us taking a step in that direction as well on our own side of governance over here. So I think we're ready for a roll call vote.
I do have one last comment. I do want to move forward today with adopting our board goals, just with the caveat that we'll be receiving a better understanding of the percentage of where we are with K3 with third graders with the testing. So I think when we get those results, I think we'll be able to amend it because right now we're at the 28%, but we just don't know that for sure to start next school year. So until we wait to get those results, we want to make sure that we have the accurate percentage that our baseline.
Thank you very much for bringing that up. And what was the month we might get that data in? Was it August? We're thinking
June.
Sorry.
Madam President, we should have that data by early July, late June.
Great. With that, I thank you very much. With that, I think we're ready for a roll call vote. Mrs. Valencia.
Sorry about that. Roll call to approve with an exception of an update later on this year. Action item I4 for the student outcome focused governing goals and guardrails. Ms. Jessica Bueno.
Aye.
Mr. Reginald Carrillo.
Aye.
Ms. Erica de la Rosa.
Aye.
Dr. Alicia Vink.
Aye.
And Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Aye.
Thank you.
With that, our motion passes. Congratulations, guys. Team, we did it.
Month late, but we did it.
Right, we made it. Okay, with that, we will move on to item J1. Do we have any board requests this evening?
I have a few. The first one is an update on the enrollment for next year's preschoolers and kindergartners and the available seats. I'm not sure how we say that. The capacity. The second one is an update on the equity plan. And the third one is, as we hopefully wrap up our compensation study soon, I would like to move forward with our Pathways to Success or something similar, a similar initiative to outline the future of our district as a whole. And then last one, an update on our 2-to-2 technology ratio and the policies for students to take equipment home. And if students were not allowed to take equipment home this year, I'm requesting a written policy or procedure that allows for that in August. I think that is all. Thank you. Oh, sorry. I have one more. The last request is an update from district or legal regarding our laws surrounding state standardized testing and what would happen if we did not complete standardized testing.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other board requests? I would like to request further clarification on the law that passed that gave more of our support staff the opportunity to, I guess, have access to money that was, I don't remember which prop, was it 301? Well, there was a law that Mr. Thomas mentioned that passed where support staff that were in the classroom could participate in funding. So I just wanted to understand that better and which roles those are. And that's it. Any other, hearing no further board reports, I'm sorry, board requests. Do we have any future agenda items? J2.
I have one. Future agenda to receive, discuss, and take possible action to eliminate processed meats from the district's nutrition program.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any other future agenda items? Hearing none, do we have a motion for item K1? We'll move on to K1. Do we have a motion to adjourn our meeting this evening?
Reggie Carrillo, I motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Erica De La Rosa, I second it.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, may we please have a roll call vote to adjourn our meeting at 8:57 p.m. Mrs. Valencia.
Roll call to adjourn. Ms. Jessica Bueno,
Aye.
Mr. Regional Carrillo,
Aye.
Ms. Erica De La Rosa,
Aye.
Dr. Alicia Vink,
Aye.
and Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Aye. With that, our motion passes and we will adjourn this evening and be back in the boardroom May 22nd at 5:15. Which is a Monday. We are switching that because we'll be celebrating promotion ceremonies for our 8th graders, our future high schoolers. So congratulate them every time you see them on campus until then. Thanks, guys. Good night.